Hey everybody, it's Party Elite taking a look at some more big news from the Total War camp today. We got a great live stream showcasing Norsca on the battlefield, and we also got something a little extra. So first let's talk about a bit of a slip. I really don't like focusing on these moments because I don't want anybody to feel bad about an honest mistake, but pretending it didn't happen is equally foolish. So let's briefly talk about a couple of screens here, put together for your viewing pleasure. These shots clearly confirm Norsca and Beastmen are getting Regiments of Renown, potentially as a part of the Norsca DLC, or potentially as a part of Creative Assembly's 30th anniversary celebrations on, I believe it's August 18th. That is absolutely awesome to see even being considered here, because 90% of developers would probably just be rubbing their hands together saying, great, we got them to pay for the DLC, why bother making old DLC better? So, well done, Creative Assembly. I also want to make note of the fact that CA seems to use PH as a way to mark placeholder artwork. I find that funny just because I'm used to seeing the letters FPO stand in for placement only. Either way, so far we can see Regiments of Renown for Ungor Spearmen with shields, Goreherd with shields, Bestigor Herd, who actually have great swords as per the icon, Senegor with great weapons, and Minotaurs. We also have Regiments of Renown for what looks like Berserkers, Skin Wolves, and War Mammoths, as well as Chaos Marauders for Norsca. The Goreherd with shields had their stats on display momentarily as well, and you can see them here. We don't know how final these stats are, but the addition of Stalk and Vanguard will be very fun for those advanced deployment armies, and we're seeing great buffs to all stats across the board except for speed. But, as they said on stream,
There's nothing to see here.
There's nothing to see here.
What remains to be seen is if we're actually going to get Regiments of Renown across the board for other DLC factions as well. All that's been confirmed so far is Norsca and Beastmen, but I'm pretty sure we're getting it for everything. Now let's look at Norsca itself. Wulfric the Wanderer up first, armored quite well with a silver shield as well to protect him from ranged fire, and he's also got missile resistance on top of that. He's not the fastest on foot, but a good charge bonus will get him hitting hard on the charge, and then a weapon strength of 490 is solid as a general. Melee attack of 70 and melee defense of 50 means he'll do well in most melee engagements, and his duelist trait is fittingly there to ensure he does well against enemy characters, especially when paired with Marauder Champions, his ability to slow down and weaken enemy lords and characters, hitting them with a negative 48% speed reduction, a negative 30 armor, and a negative 60 melee defense. That is a massive drop lasting 24 seconds and cooling down every 90 seconds. Use it when you're relatively close though, and you can devastate an enemy character, especially if you're also going after them with Frostbite and maybe even the Chilling Aura. Seafang is an ability on the battlefield that brings his ship, Seafang, to the field. It's a wind spell, going in a straight line, probably doing a great deal of damage while also causing Frostbite for 6 seconds, hitting enemy units with a negative 52% speed debuff. This can only be used twice on the field though, and it has a 57-second cooldown between uses, so it must be used wisely. The model also, I just want to say, it looks absolutely terrific. I love the whole skull aesthetic that he's got going, and the flayed man on the shield is brilliant. Throg somehow looks even better. Just absolutely amazing to look at. I love the swords and stuff in his back. Beautiful, very, very cheeky. And on the battlefield as well, we've got this armor-piercing anti-large beast bringing fear to the field, which I would say is pretty fitting. I mean, just look at him. His armor, though, is comparatively low, very mid-range, I would say, but he's fast with a decent charge bonus as well, and when he gets in, 495 points of damage is going to do a lot of work with a melee attack of 60. His melee defense is solid as well at 50, and with Frostbite, he'll look to hold enemy units in place with a speed debuff of negative 52% for that 6 seconds at a time. When we talk about Frostbite, remember that it's percentage based. That means the faster a unit is, the slower you will make it with Frostbite, relatively speaking. A 52% reduction in speed is absolutely devastating. He's also got regeneration, which will help keep him alive, unless of course there's tons of fire damage coming his way. He's also got his copious vomit ability as a magic missile made out of his latest meal. The Femir Balefiend is up next, and here we see the one with the lore of fire, but they also have the lore of shadows available to them. Rather than just being casters, these guys pack a punch as well. An armor of 65 is nothing to scoff at, and a speed of 54 will have these guys closing gaps quite quickly. The melee attack is quite low, as is the melee defense, but a 400 weapon strength with armor piercing is going to serve as a good support structure, especially with added fear factor, and let's not forget the armor sundering assistance as well. The War Mammoth was up next. This one is tame, not feral, with the Howdah carrying javelin throwing marauders. These babies are absolutely massive, and their stats reflect that. Well armored, solid leadership of 70, a speed of 56. this thing is going to close the gap quick and hit hard with a charge bonus of 80, definitely on the higher end of things, and none of this takes impact damage into account, of course. A weapon strength of 525 that is 400 points of armor piercing, and anti-infantry with a 30-point bonus against infantry almost guarantees quick work to most enemy infantry units, despite the low melee attack and melee defense. Fear and Terror, of course, and with anti-large missiles on hand doing 35 points of damage every 10 seconds, with a 15 bonus versus large and 7 points of armor piercing, able to keep cavalry at bay as well. I get the feeling this thing can probably disrupt formations too, just a hunch though. Frostworm up next, the terrifying, flying, frost-spiting beast with chilling aura to really slow down enemy units and absolutely destroy them with a weapon strength of 450 and the armor-piercing mark as well. Very fast and of course, very mobile considering it's airborne, it also does magical damage and will hit well on the charge, though it actually can't stick in melee for too long with a melee defense of 34, which is relatively low. Icy as it is also susceptible to fire damage, though it does have missile resistance, which should help keep it safe in the air unless really focused down upon. I really want to see the Frostworm shut down flanking maneuvers with ease. A speed of 90 and all those slowing abilities, I shiver at the thought. Next up, the Skin Wolves are looking absolutely great, causing fear while bringing frenzy and regeneration, and a weapon strength of 60 makes Skin Wolves very strong, but the melee defense of 28, an armor of 15, and a melee attack of just 32 means they can be relatively quickly taken care of if not managed well. The 21 points of armor piercing damage and the 30 bonus versus large will be extremely helpful when managed well though, that's for sure. And I see these guys as an equivalent to Forsaken with the high speed of 75 and a decent charge bonus of 30. Able to flank, move quickly, shut down enemy range support, and with the anti-large stat as well, also able to shut down enemy cavalry movement. The armored version will be a little slower, but is more of a mainline unit. We didn't see their stats though, so let's not spend too much time talking about them. Just for reference on these guys' anti-large ability though, let's take a look at this Charge into the Knights of the Realm with their anti-large stat, 80 armor, and melee defense of 24. 2 units charge in to drop health by about a quarter in an instant, and then the beating continues to make very quick work of the Knights. They ultimately shatter and run off the field with the Skin Wolves having taken almost no damage. Marauder Berserkers come in wielding double axes, looking to get lots of hurt done with frenzy and a weapon strength of 52, and they'll close the gap at an alright pace with a speed of 37. It was mentioned that these guys are anti-infantry as well, though we don't see the little icon for it. I assume that means they have an area of effect swipe like the aspiring champions from Chaos. But despite their excitement to jump into battle, they can actually fall apart pretty quickly with a very low armor of just 15 and a melee defense of just 18. Get these guys raging and berserking off low-tier enemy units before sending them against more dangerous opponents, I think. And if you're not sure what Rage and Berserk are, Berserk is a faster form of Rage, which is a Norscan trait that Marauders will have. It's divided into 3 stages, each stage activating as more time is spent engaged. In Berserk, Stage 1 gives a plus 16 to leadership, Stage 2 adds a 22% physical resistance, and Stage 3 tacks on a plus 16 to melee attack. These are absolutely terrific bonuses, allowing these guys to cut through the enemy very quickly as long as they're kept alive. Marauder Champions are elite infantry and come with axe and shield or great weapons. Armor of 80 and bronze shields are solid and a pretty high leadership too. Most of these stats aren't anything to write home about, but the very high melee defense certainly suggests great longevity in battle alongside that 80 armor. The comparatively low melee attack is interesting, but they'll be sticking around in battle. This, again, is the axe and shield variant, and there's also a great weapon variant that we didn't actually see today. Marauder Hunters are a ranged variant with armor-piercing missiles, while the javelin variants will be anti-large. A pretty short range of 65, and with an armor of 15 and a melee defense of 20, they can be very quickly taken care of in melee despite that decent melee combatant trait. With that said, they'll do fine against zombies or skeleton warriors that crop up in your rear lines or other low-tier units. Now we've got the Norscan Ice Trolls. A weapon strength of 102 includes 69 points of armor-piercing damage, a solid 40 charge bonus, a speed of 54, while also able to slow enemy units down with frostbite, and a melee attack of 40. That's a pretty solid unit, especially in a support role to prevent escape, and the damage output is quite solid as well. They have low leadership as one can expect from trolls, but ranking these guys up on the battlefield will make quite a difference there. And when they're out with their Troll King, they do get buffs on the campaign map as well. Regeneration keeps them alive as long as they stick and fight, but they're also weak to fire, of course. A very low melee defense of just 28 is also quite dangerous, but if you're ranking them up for leadership, it's going to help this stat as well, and they might potentially become decent mainline units. Then we got the Norscan Giant. This drunken giant is absolutely hilarious to look at, and he definitely needs to join a support group. Fear and terror on the field, anti-infantry with sweeping attacks of his club, and an armor-piercing weapon strength of 530 is huge. Very low armor and a middling melee defense of 30, but a high melee attack of 68, and a great leadership of 100 makes a very potent unit on the field. Textbook giant, but make sure he doesn't get bogged down in melee against anti-large cavalry. He'll deal out hurt, but he'll eat quite a bit of it too. And keep him away from your ale. Marauder Spearmen were shown on the battlefield, very low on armor, but a decent melee defense of 37, and the anti-large weapon strength of 25 makes for a unit that should be able to hold a line somewhat effectively and take care of enemy cavalry decently enough. With all of this on the table, and granted we haven't seen everything, I feel like Norsca is really going to be about controlling the flow of combat. With speed debuffs that can take a horseback Leoncoeur down to a speed of 8 when stacked, and with monsters that can get a great deal of damage and speed debuffs in across the line, these guys can shut down flanking maneuvers, clever ambushes, and even enemy lords with relative ease. Fairly glass cannon with most of their Marauder infantry units, they will struggle in the early parts of combat, but when Marauders kick into full gear with Rage and Berserk with the Berserkers, they will do better and better. Support structures are going to be very important for Norsca, I feel. Support your Marauders with monsters to get them raging and berserking, and then allow the Marauders to get work done as the monsters go elsewhere. Of course, that's a very early thought, but it'd be nice to see an army that is so heavily reliant on support structures and combined arms tactics to survive, let alone win. Now that's all for today, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content, news, battles, and campaigns. The marketing is not cooling down whatsoever, so there's going to be lots to talk about. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and until next time, cheers.